Hey everyone, so in this section we'll be talking about potential ways to fund your university tuition. Now, of course, we're not going to be touching upon all of the potential options because there's obviously going to be countless options that are going to depend largely on where you're located, what your background is, what you're studying in particular, and what country you happen to be located in, what options happen to be available to you there. However, we're going to be touching upon some of the more common routes. So these might be some options that you might have heard of in the past and you're looking for some additional information about that and you're trying to draw some distinction between them to see which ones are best for you. It's important for you to use this as a starting point to continue to do your research because of course as the cost of tuition continues to rise, it's going to be more and more important for students to find alternative methods to actually fund their tuition to minimize the costs to them and their families. So the first one I want to talk about is probably one of the most ideal routes in a lot of ways, which is scholarships and bursaries. And one of the great things about scholarships and bursaries is the fact that in almost all cases they don't actually require the student to pay them back. It's also really important to remember that scholarships and bursaries are not only necessarily tied to the university, but there's also external scholarships and bursaries that students should look at as well. And so, of course, there are some universities that will offer scholarships automatically upon admission into a specific program. There are some within the university, particularly within alumni associations, that will allow students to actually apply for them as well too for some additional funding there. But of course, there's a ton of external scholarships that a lot of students don't even look at all. In a lot of cases, they might actually require students to apply to them, and maybe they'll have to write a specific paper about a particular topic, or they'll have to enter some type of contest for them to be eligible for that as well. Some of them might actually be based on a specific cultural background or religious affiliation as well, or how active somebody is in a particular community as well. So it's important to look at all of the particular options that happen to be available to you. There's tons of awesome resources online that will help you filter some of these scholarships a lot better and help you find them in a way that you can actually apply to them if you wouldn't have known about them otherwise. One of the other things to really consider is the fact that a lot of people assume that to get a scholarship or bursary, you have to have a super high GPA or a super high SAT score. While that does definitely help for certain scholarships, and in fact some of them might actually have like a threshold where you'll need to have above a certain GPA or SAT to be eligible to apply for it, but there are a lot of scholarships that actually don't have this requirement either, and so a lot of them might be based on some other criteria they might look at as well. In some cases, maybe even how much somebody has been active in a particular community, or even how many volunteer hours they might have, or something along those lines. And so it's important for you to look at all of the available options to you and to look at the ones that actually pertain to you and to your specific needs. Now, the next one we want to talk about is something that might sound similar, but it's actually very different, and this is through grants. Now, grants are typically awarded, can be awarded by governments, can be awarded by institutions or corporations as well too. In a lot of cases, this might be more relevant to people at the master's or PhD level as well. However, I'm going to explain to you why this could be relevant to you as an undergrad as well. And the purpose of grants in a lot of cases is for somebody to carry out certain research about a particular topic. And so if somebody is studying environmental science as a particular example, the government might offer a grant for somebody to research a particular problem that the government might be trying to face, and they're looking for some research assistance there. The same thing might be true for a lot of corporations that might want to outsource some of their research. They might offer a grant to somebody within an institution who happens to be studying that, and they can actually work with the corporation and will have a grant to be able to fulfill the research needed to do so. One of the things to actually consider is if this isn't something that you can qualify for at the undergraduate level, then perhaps there's opportunities through your institution to work with graduate students or to work with PhD students or even professors to a certain degree to maybe even be a research assistant. And so perhaps they'll get the grant, but they'll also be able to kind of pay you with that grant money for you to get some hands-on research experience. Now, this is great for a number of different reasons. The first reason is that you'll actually build strong connections with faculty or other people within the department as well, which will be extremely helpful if you're looking at graduate research or if you're looking to even get within the field as well and you're looking to get really strong references, or want to have a few publications under your belt as well. But it's also very important because of the fact that you might actually be able to get paid to further on some of your research as well. And of course, this is going to be dependent largely on what your field of study is, what university you happen to be attending, and how open they're going to be to this type of arrangement. So it definitely isn't something that's available across the board, but it's an amazing opportunity for people who can actually secure it because it's really the best of both worlds. You get the opportunity to research within the field. You have the opportunity to get to work closely with professors or graduate students. And you also have the ability to potentially get some publications or get some research experience under your belt as well too while getting paid. So it's really a great opportunity if this is something that happens to be available to you, probably at the end of your undergraduate career, if at all. But if not, then it's something to definitely keep your eyes out for if you happen to be going to graduate school. Now this actually transitions to the next route, which is not necessarily only looking at being a research assistant, but also a teaching assistant. This is actually something that's very common in many institutions. In some institutions, it's going to depend. They might require the candidate to be a graduate student, and in some cases, there are people who are later in their undergraduate career who are able to be a teaching assistant to maybe a first-year class, as an example. And this is, again, an amazing opportunity because it helps to reinforce a lot of the concepts that you've learned earlier on in your undergraduate career. You're able to gain some work experience to a certain degree, and you're also able to get paid for doing so as well. It's also great because you get to work closer with some of the professors who happen to be teaching this course. So if you're looking for grad school references, or if you're just looking to solidify some of the information that you've learned in a way that's going to help you further your own development going forward, then this is going to be something that's going to be particularly helpful to you to look at as well. It's also important to remember that in addition to teaching assistants, professors might also be looking for assistants to help with other things as well too. So developing course materials as an example, maybe even doing some type of marketing or facilitating some study groups or workshops within their larger classes, particularly for first year classes. Again, this is going to depend largely on the particular institution you're at, what you happen to be studying as well. So this isn't something that's universal across the board, but definitely something to keep in mind if it happens to be available at your school. The next one is one that a lot of people really overlook, which is actually going into the military. Now, of course, this doesn't apply to everyone. Not everyone is going to be interested in going into the military, and not everyone is going to feel as though this is going to help them further their own personal journey as well, too. So this might only apply to a certain number of people, but it's really something to consider because of the fact that in some cases, depending on how long you're actually in the military, there might be some education options for you as well, too. They might be able to supplement this or provide this to you. But in addition to that, you might also have some work experience that goes along with that as well. And so in addition to potentially having some of your tuition costs being covered, the fact that you can get some work experience in addition to that might make you even more competitive in the job market as well. In addition to that, the military might provide you with some opportunities to actually get a job when you graduate as well too. So there might be some benefits there, but also some employers might actually look upon this as being something that's very favorable. If they want somebody who happens to have some experience in a particular field, they might look specifically at somebody who happens to come from a military background. So if it is something that's applicable to you, definitely do consider that as well. And the last route is probably the most common route, the one that most people have probably heard about, which is actually through student loans. And student loans is going to be one of the areas that you want to be very careful with. There's actually two types of student loans. There's federal loans as well as private loans as well. One of the things to keep in mind is that private loans are probably going to offer higher interest rates, and so you definitely want to make sure that you read over your loan agreement as well too, and you make sure that you can actually meet some of these obligations when you graduate. A lot of the loans that are offered by the government definitely do have some more flexible options for some students, and so a lot of people gravitate towards this first. It's really important for you to determine which of the two you actually qualify for, and how you can actually reduce it so you don't really have to rely heavily on student loans. I actually recommend that if possible you avoid them altogether, but if it is something that you absolutely are required to look to because you wouldn't be able to attend college otherwise, then it's something that you might not have a choice other than to look at this. But again, do proceed with caution. Do make sure that you consult your parents or an adult or a guardian, or maybe even some of your school administrators to determine which path is best for you. And of course, if possible, try to stay within the public loan realm just because of the fact that the interest rates tend to be a little bit easier to manage, but also in a lot of cases the repayment schedules tend to be a little bit more easier to manage as well. But again, this is going to depend specifically on the types of loans that you're looking at externally and your specific situation as well. So definitely don't take that as gospel, so to speak, but definitely look at all of your options and determine based off of what you feel is best for you. So hopefully this provides you with a great general overview. If you have any other comments, questions, concerns, or if you have any additional suggestions, I'd like to hear that in the comment section below. As always, thank you so much again for listening. If you appreciated this, make sure to like and make sure to subscribe. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.